the new SeaLife DC2000 underwater camera. I'm going to show you an unboxing, how to set up the camera, and some shooting tips. So first the unboxing. So these are all the components that are included with the DC2000. Okay, so the first thing that we'd like to do is install the battery, the memory card, which is sold separately, and charge the battery overnight. So the way to open up this waterproof door, you see there's a safety switch here that will slide over on the bottom, and then while you slide it over and hold, you slide down the lock, and that will release the door. So you install the battery with the contacts inward and up like this, and you'll see the orange plastic locking tab that will keep the battery in place. And then install the memory card. Now this is a micro SD card. The maximum gigabytes is 64 gigabytes. So the camera is not recommended for 128 gigabytes or higher. And also what's important is the speed, the read-write speed. So in this case, this again, SanDisk Ultra Plus 64 gig. It's a class 1, which is 10 megabytes per second. So no need to get a card that's 30 megabytes a second. It will not work any faster. You're just spending more money for that. And you can run into compatibility issues. Alright, so remember, 64 gigabyte max, and look for a class 10 read-write speed. So we'll install the memory card. And then it'll click into place. Okay? And make sure that the sealing area here, this rubber gasket, is clean, and that also the opposing surface to make contact with the sealing gasket is clean. So no hair or sand or anything trapped in there. To close it, push the door down and really, give it a little push, because the seal needs to form a good seal. And as you're pushing down, pull up on the lock. Now you can see it's locked in place. Okay, now that the battery is fully charged, there's a memory card. Let's go through some of the controls on the camera. First, we have the power button, video start-stop button, shutter button, mode dial, playback button, Wi-Fi button, menu button, and here's a four-way navigation button with OK. So this four-way navigation is up, down, right, left. And OK is used to confirm the setting. As you scroll through the menu, you scroll through pictures, and then you push the OK button to select or to set something. So let's go through that. First, we'll power on the camera. And the first time that you power it on, you'll see that the language will automatically come up. So you see all the language options. You can scroll through using the up, down, right, left key. So I will pick English, OK. And now it's the date time. So again, you scroll through the year. You can increase the year by pushing up. That's correct. We'll scroll through the month to month number 5 or 6. And it's, you can go through that. That's pretty basic. You push OK, and then that sets the date time. Alright, so camera's powered on. You see a live view. We'll just bring a subject here for demonstration purposes. Pushing the shutter halfway will focus the camera. So you can see there's a green box that appears, or a red box. Green box is good. Okay, right there's a green box that says the camera has found the subject and is focused on it. A red box would appear that would indicate that the camera did not find the subject or may not be in focus. I'll give you an example. If I try to take a picture of the white surface here, there's really no contrast or anything for the camera to focus on. I push the shutter halfway, and it takes a little bit longer. It's hunting for the subject, and you can see the red dot or the red square appears. So again, I slide the subject in place and push the shutter halfway, and you can see it's pretty quick to lock in and focus. Then you push all the way to capture the image. So the shutter button, again, halfway push to focus, all the way to capture the image. Alright, the video button. When we push the video button, it immediately starts recording video. So here, I'll push it. You can see before it starts recording video, it will set the focus. Now in this case, it doesn't show you the red box, green box, so you can see, is the subject in focus or not. Again, push the button a second time, stops the video. Alright, so to playback, we'll push the playback button here. And you can see it tells you, is it a video clip or is it a image file? And the way to scroll through, it's not right, left, it's actually up, down. So push the up key and you can see the picture file or the image file that I just took. And I scroll back and there's the video file. So you can also, by pushing the OK button, see different kinds of views for playback. So you could have, for example, a thumbnail view. Shows you up to 9 thumbnails. You could even get a larger thumbnail view or more thumbnails. This one shows 36 thumbnails. And you can zoom in. Okay, so this allows you to zoom in on the picture to really see that you get that sharp detail, and then you can either increase the zoom or decrease the zoom pushing the right, left, or if you push the OK button, you can navigate throughout the picture. Okay, so pushing the playback button again will exit playback and back into preview mode. Okay, here we go. And the next here, I'd like to talk about the mode dial. So you'll see all the different modes, basic settings for the camera, or the shooting modes for the camera. We'll go around the clock here. The first one, it should come in program mode. Program mode is an auto exposure mode and very easy to use. What it allows you is to program any of the settings, and the camera will keep those settings. Okay, so for example, white balance, ISO, EV, all these different camera settings are accessible, and they will be saved when you power off the camera or when you switch modes and then switch back. The next one, if I go clockwise, is Intelligent Auto. That really locks out a lot of the menu settings, and it's intended sort of as the ultimate auto. It tries to assess the scene and pick the appropriate settings for you. So it's a no thinking mode. The next will be a scene mode for common types of pictures that you take. For example, nighttime, or a portrait, or landscape, or macro. So you just select the scene and the camera will automatically set the appropriate settings for that type of scene. The next is panorama, so you can take a 180 or a 360 picture and it will stitch it together. And you do that by basically holding the camera steady, and it guides you through to keep the camera on plane. Next will be manual, that's M. Allows you to adjust the aperture and shutter speed. And I'll show you real quickly how you do that. So by default, it's f1.8, 1/30th of a second shutter speed. We push the OK button, just push and release. And you can now, by using the down key, increase the aperture. Push the up key to decrease the aperture. You have the full range from f1.8 to f11 and 1/3 stops. So you pick the right aperture, then you push the OK button to select shutter speed, and again up or down to adjust the shutter speed, and then finally push it to set that aperture and shutter speed. Okay, next will be underwater modes. The camera has 4 different underwater modes, whether you're shooting with a light, with a flash, or without light. So in other words, just the camera in the housing, diving, or snorkeling. The next one is A for aperture priority. This allows you to set the aperture. The camera will select the appropriate shutter speed. And S for shutter speed priority. You pick the shutter speed, the camera will select the proper aperture. And then finally back to program mode. The other buttons here, we have the menu. So pushing that accesses the menu, and again you could scroll all the way down through picture settings, through then video settings, and finally through system settings. Okay, so the final button here is the Wi-Fi button. We'll get into that later. Pushing this button is actually only done when you have established a wireless connection, and again I will get into that later. One other thing I'd like to cover is there's a shortcut key, and that is the OK key. What that is it gives you a shortcut to your favorite settings. In this case, zoom has been set up, so if I push the shortcut you could see zoom off or on. Now you can quickly change that by going to the menu and you scroll over to system settings, you find shortcut, and you can see all the different possible shortcuts. So in this case I like to set it to auto exposure and autofocus lock, and again I can get into some tips on that later. Okay, so that's set now. If I push the OK button, you see the auto exposure, autofocus lock setting comes up real quick. Now let's set up the camera for underwater use. The first thing that we'll want to do is change the mode dial to the fish icon. These are the underwater modes. Then I'll push the menu button, and the first item you'll see is underwater scene modes. Scroll down to that to highlight it and push OK. So 4 underwater scene modes will show up. We have dive, snorkel, external flash, and external light. Today, or for now, we're going to focus on the dive and snorkel. We'll get into external flash and external light setup later. The difference between dive and snorkel is really the degree of color correction, and is relative to your depth. So we're going to select dive, that is when you are below 25 feet 8 meters. If you're at shallower depths, snorkeling or shallow dives, you can select snorkel mode, which is a little bit less color correction. So dive mode, OK, and then the menu button to exit. And that's pretty much it. Now we'll want to install the camera into the underwater housing. Although the camera is waterproof, it is best to have it inside of the housing. This makes it a lot easier to operate with the larger buttons, and is also the extra waterproof protection, so you have double protection. So the first thing that we'll do, put the camera aside here, is there's a protective film. We can remove that. SeaLife does offer screen protectors, just like what you'd find for your smartphone. That's available at your dive shop if you'd like to protect the screen. So we can remove these 2 protective films. The lanyard here will attach to the lanyard connection point. And a lot of people have said, oh, well, the clip doesn't fit. Well, that's not really. The clip is intended to attach to your BCD. The lanyard actually connects by looping the cord. So we put the end of the loop through, and then the whole strap through that. So that's how you attach the strap. And now, again, you have a clip that can be attached to the D-ring on your BCD. Before inserting the camera into the housing, we'll want to make sure that the O-ring is seated properly, the O-ring is clean. So in good lighting, look around to make sure that there is no debris, hairs, particles. So you can use a lint-free cotton cloth. Best is to have it moistened and you could wipe it around. This O-ring is perfectly clean. It's also good to inspect the O-ring contact surface. So when the housing is closed, this surface is contacting the O-ring to form a seal. One other thing to check is the lens on the inside and the outside, that there are no fingerprints or smudges. So again, cleaning this not with any lens cleaner or chemical, it's not necessary. A lint-free cloth, moistened or dry, is fine. So if there is any sand particles, it's best to blow that or brush that away, but make sure that the lens port is clean. The housing and camera comes with a 2-pack sample of moisture muncher. What this is a drying agent, a desiccant, to keep the inside of the housing nice and dry. So we'll open this up. You can see it's blue, that means it's active. If this turns pink, then it's time to replace the moisture muncher. The moisture muncher slides right into this pocket. So first on this side and then push down, and that will stay in place. We'll want to make sure that the mode dial is synchronized to the camera before inserting the camera. So I'll switch the mode dial to the fish mode, underwater, and make sure that the camera is set to fish mode. Install the camera like this, making sure that the lanyard is out of the way, there are no obstructions. Close the housing, engage the latch, and that's it. The housing is now sealed. We'll also want to make sure that the mode dial is rotating smoothly and that the housing mode dial and the camera mode dial have engaged. If for some reason you do not sync the mode dials of the camera and the housing, it's not the end of the world. You'll be able to still see what mode you're in on the LCD display. So I'll power on the camera, and I can see that it is in dive mode. And I can also rotate, and so in this case aperture priority, so it's synchronized. So the controls on the housing obviously are matching the camera. We have the power, video button, the shutter button, mode dial, playback, focus. Focus is also the up key, flash, which is also the down key, and the menu and OK button. So you notice we do not have the left and the right buttons of the 4-way navigation of the inner camera, but that's not necessary, and you'll see that I'm still able to scroll through pictures and menus and do every other setting that I could using that left and right button. So in this case you could see the camera just dimmed. That's actually a power save. If I push the shutter halfway, it wakes up the camera again. Originally we set up the camera in dive mode, and as I said, the dive mode uses a little bit more color correction than snorkel mode because there are less red colors at depth. So I want to show you where you can change the white balance in case you change your depth. So let's say you start off diving at deeper depths and you end the dive at a shallow depth. So you push the menu, scroll down to white balance, push OK, and you see the options. It's currently set to blue water deep. We're going to set it to blue water shallow. Now push OK, push the menu button to exit. So a little bit less color correction. I was able to change the white balance or color correction depending on my depth while I was diving. I'd like to talk a little bit about the flash function, flash button. So pushing this launches all the different flash options. You can see the default is flash off when you're in underwater diving or snorkel mode. But there are other options. So from the top you have auto flash. So depending on the ambient lighting, the flash will fire or will not fire. Red eye reduction, that is a land mode, not intended for underwater. Force on, that means the flash will always fire regardless of how bright it is outside. And we have slow sync, that's an advanced flash feature, and then back to force off. So again, the default is force off. The reason why you want to keep the flash off is first, the effective range is not very far, at best 10-12 inches, and is intended for macro photography. If you keep the flash on, it can also, especially in lower visibility water, create backscatter. So when the flash fires, it illuminates the particles that are suspended in the water, creating dots in the picture. So again, the flash, only use that in clear water for macro photography that's within, say, no more than 10-12 inches maximum. So I'll show you how this works. I set up first I push the menu, I'll scroll up to the system settings, can scroll up or down, it goes through, cycles through the entire menu. And you can see down here is shortcut, push OK, and I've selected AE auto exposure / AF autofocus lock. Okay, so that's set up as the shortcut. Now when I push the OK button, the shortcut command, I have the options. AE, AF lock is off, or auto exposure lock only, auto focus lock only, or auto exposure lock and auto focus lock. So here I'll select auto exposure lock and auto focus lock. So if I go, and again the camera is set up in continuous autofocus, so as I'm recording video the camera will adjust, will monitor the scene and adjust the focus accordingly. So if I start recording and I push the focus button, you'll see that the AF and AE lock icon appears. Right now the camera will not adjust the focus or exposure automatically. It is locked. And the nice thing about that is it makes for a smoother video. You don't see exposure jumps, you don't see focusing changes. So you can unlock it by just pushing the focus button again, and the camera will expose. It will focus automatically, and then you can lock it again. So that's something you can lock and unlock depending on major changes in the shooting distance or in lighting. The shutter button in video start stop will work basically just like the camera does on land. Pushing the shutter button halfway will focus, will show the green box or red box, and pushing the video button will start the video. One thing about the video is the camera will set the focus before shooting, depending on your shooting distance. So in this case, let's use this manual. I'll be about 6-7 inches away, and I'll start the video. So I could see the camera quickly adjusted to the focus and is now recording. There's a countdown timer in there that will count down from 29 minutes to 0. So it's the maximum you can take in a video clip is 29 minutes. And again, I'll push this to stop the video. Now it's important to understand that when I start a video and the camera initially focuses on the subject, it will now lock the focus. So if I change the shooting distance to something, let's say from macro to far away, that far away object will not be in focus. It is best to stop the video and then change your subject or shooting distance and start another video. There is a video setting feature if you go into the menu that is continuous focus video, and what that will do is the camera will constantly monitor and adjust the focusing. That may or may not be a desirable setting for you, because if you're constantly changing the shooting distance, the fact that the camera checks the focus could be disruptive to the final video production. So I'd recommend keeping the continuous autofocus video to off, and then stop the video, change the subject and the shooting distance, and then start another video clip. Another tip about focusing when shooting videos is, like I said, there is a continuous autofocus setting for video. If you're to turn that on, there is a new autofocus lock and auto exposure lock that was released with a firmware update. You can download that from the SeaLife website. So I'll show you how this works. I set up first I push the menu, I'll scroll up to the system settings. You can scroll up or down, it goes through, cycles through the entire menu. And you can see down here is shortcut, push OK, and I've selected AE auto exposure / AF autofocus lock. Okay, so that's set up as the shortcut. Now when I push the OK button, the shortcut command, I have the options. AE, AF lock is off, or auto exposure lock only, auto focus lock only, or auto exposure lock and auto focus lock. So here I'll select auto exposure lock and auto focus lock. So if I go, and again the camera is set up in continuous autofocus, so as I'm recording video the camera will adjust, will monitor the scene and adjust the focus accordingly. So if I start recording and I push the focus button, you'll see that the AF and AE lock icon appears. Right now the camera will not adjust the focus or exposure automatically. It is locked. And the nice thing about that is it makes for a smoother video. You don't see exposure jumps, you don't see focusing changes. So you can unlock it by just pushing the focus button again, and the camera will expose. It will focus automatically, and then you can lock it again. So that's something you can lock and unlock depending on major changes in the shooting distance or in lighting.